Hello and welcome back to Tried and Tested Cycle Coaching. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to give you 6 ways or tactics to help you nail and really smash your next interval session. So you've done your testing, set your zones, and presumably you've mapped out a good program with the right mix of intensity and volume. Now the hard work really begins. Some, if not all of the following might seem a bit obvious, but indulge me and let me dig into some of them in a little bit more detail. If anything, we all need a reminder from time to time, even the likes of Poggy. So, kicking off, number 1, mentally get in the game. You need to psych yourself up before a hard session. A good way is to visualize yourself doing the session and really smashing each of those intervals. Ask yourself, what's it going to feel like and how is this session going to make you stronger? You really need to motivate yourself. So if I know I've got a tough session planned in for, say, the following day, I'll be narrowing my focus with the intention of getting the most out of myself. What you don't want to do is go blindly into a session. I've done it myself in the past. You just jump on the trainer or bike and then you just see what's on for the day, only to then realise it's VO2 max day and you're not mentally prepared. Even if you are aware in advance, make sure you're going through the motions mentally ahead of time. It's been well documented how much the mind can either help or hinder your performance, both in mentally demanding situations as well as physical. So get that mental game on point. Use past races or events to help you get ready and motivated, by visualizing how you perform then and how this time it's going to be even stronger. Number 2, sleep, the most underrated recovery tool that basically costs you nothing. If you're serious about your cycling, then chances are you're just going to skip to number 3 on the list, as you should have this well and truly dialed in. If you're not, I can't stress enough that by cutting your sleep short, you might as well not be training. It's as simple as that. I know from my own experience and through coaching that unfortunately sleep isn't always prioritised, but it should be. If you've got a hard session planned in the next day or so and you've been a bit lax on the sleep front, try and get to bed a bit earlier and give yourself the best chance of hitting those peak numbers. If you don't, then unfortunately you are actively sabotaging your own performance. There are a ton of studies out there which validate this, but in very general sort of average terms, you're looking at around a 5 to 15% reduction in performance if you're only getting 6 hours versus 8 hours. So stop the doom scrolling, put the phone away, and get an early night. Number 3, fuel up. We need the high octane stuff for these sessions. Intervals typically mean that you're going to be riding at or above your anaerobic threshold. At this intensity, we know that glycogen will be the primary fuel source. So if you're slightly depleted going into a hard session, then chances are you won't be maximising your ability to hit those peak numbers. In an ideal world, you'd do this a couple of hours after having a substantial breakfast, allowing time for it to move out of the stomach. What you don't want to be doing is intervals that are too close to having just consumed a full meal. That could get pretty messy. That said, you also probably don't want to be attempting the session fasted. So having something like a piece of fruit or a couple of slices of toast with honey or jam should do the trick. Ensure you have something more substantial soon after the session, with a mix of protein and fats as well as carbohydrates to help with that recovery process. Number 4, the warm-up. If there's only one thing you do from this list, don't neglect the warm-up. A proper warm-up is essential for peak performance. This facilitates various functions, not least getting the body prepared for the effort. I know we all lead busy lives, but neglecting this part of the session is not the one. If you are short on time, then I would urge you to either move the session or just reduce the number of intervals. Don't compromise the quality of the intervals with an insufficient warm-up. The warm-up is critical to get your aerobic system fully functioning. This takes considerably longer to warm up than your anaerobic energy system. We're talking minutes versus seconds. Even when you're working at or above your anaerobic threshold, the contribution from your aerobic system is still significant. For a typical VO2 max session, I like to do at least 20 minutes, consisting of a gentle ramp up of around 10 to 12 minutes, ending at a power close to your threshold or FTP. The second phase of the warm-up then consists of some shorter 1-minute efforts at or slightly above your target interval power. This second phase also helps you get a sense of the demands ahead and can help indicate if you're on for either a good or bad day. At this point, you can either carry on or consider canning the session and doing it another day. For these very reasons, don't cut the warm-up short. Number 5, consider modulating your effort. So the warm-up should have given you a good indication of how well you are recovered and fueled and ready to go. However, depending on how well you're tuned into your own body, the session can still go sideways even if the warm-up felt good. This is where having some awareness can ensure you get the most from the session without it turning into a complete disaster. So this is likely to happen if you're coming to the end of a longer block of training. You might be carrying a bit more fatigue, and as a result it can take a little longer to warm up. Also, with the fatigue, you just don't have the same level of reserves that you might do when you're fresh. But you can still get through the session and create the right sort of stimulus. So what do I mean by modulate? As an example, say you're doing the classic 4x4 minute VO2 session and you're into the first interval, and after say, 90 seconds, you can feel that the legs are already starting to hurt a bit more than they should. The breathing is more laboured than it should be at this early stage of the session. Heart rate looks like it's a bit too high as well. And similarly, you could be on your last interval and about to crack. So this intervention will help in both situations. So what you want to do is just back off slightly. So say you're doing, 350 watts for your 4 minutes and you're at 350, but things are not going well. Just back off 5 or 10 watts. Maybe that is all that's going to be needed to bring things under control. Trust me, at this level it can make a massive difference. You may not need to do it for the whole interval. Chances are you will get that little bit of recovery, and then for the last part you'll finish at your target power. It will look a little bit like an over and under when you finish, but that's fine. You was right up there where you needed to be. Now if you're using erg mode, then either take it out of erg or just nudge the level down a bit on the intensity. Using erg is fine if you're confident you can get through the session okay, but personally I like to ride with erg off and use cadence and gears. It also feels a bit more how it would on the road. I won't get into the pros and cons of erg in this one, but don't over rely on this for every session. It can be both helpful and a hindrance. So the last one, number 6. Consider the timing of when you complete the session. Don't be afraid to move your session to another part of the day or even another day later in the week, especially if you are carrying some acute fatigue. Unfortunately, intervals are hard, and if they wasn't, then we would all be doing them and everyone would be an elite cyclist. And doing them early in the morning, not long after waking, is even harder. At least that's what the science generally says. Obviously, this will somewhat depend on your chronotype, as in are you a morning or evening person, but for the large majority of people, the optimal time of day to get the most out of yourself is late afternoon or early evening. The key reasons for this are core body temperature, hormonal profile, and metabolic factors. So with core body temperature, it's generally at its lowest in the early morning upon waking and peaks in the late afternoon. A higher core temperature means improved muscle elasticity and force production, faster nerve conduction velocity, so quicker reaction times, enhanced blood flow to muscles, and generally a lower perceived exertion for the same power output. In terms of hormonal profile, testosterone, which is important for muscle strength and power, is naturally higher in the morning. However, the cortisol to testosterone ratio is often more favorable in the afternoon, creating a better anabolic environment for performance. Adrenaline and noradrenaline also tend to be higher in the afternoon, increasing alertness and readiness for exertion. With metabolic factors, some studies suggest that carbohydrate utilization is more efficient in the afternoon, which is beneficial for sustained high-intensity efforts. So if you typically train early in the day and you're struggling to complete sessions and hit those peak numbers, consider maybe deferring the session to later in the day. You might find that you can get a few more watts and the session might just feel that little bit more tolerable. Similarly, just because it's in the plan on a given day doesn't mean it needs to be completed then. A plan is just a framework, and often it's okay and actually good to deviate from the plan if you know you won't be able to get the most out of yourself. Hopefully you found this information helpful, and if so, please hit the subscribe button. Also, feel free to leave a comment on this or any other topic you feel would be helpful to get more insight on. See you in the next one.